If you can play this piano, I'll marry you. Billionaire mocked. Black CEO plays like a genius. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into this incredible story. Imagine a lavish, high-profile event. One of those elite parties where the rich and powerful gather in a room glittering with gold and glass, where the air is thick with the sound of expensive laughter and clinking crystal. At the heart of this party stands Richard Connors, the billionaire CEO of a leading tech company, known for his sharp business acumen and even sharper tongue. He has everything anyone could ever want: wealth, influence, and power. But there's something about him that has always rubbed people the wrong way. His arrogance is like a shield, and tonight, he's ready to show off just how far his wealth can take him. Standing at the corner of the room, by the grand piano that's being played softly in the background, is Cassandra. She's a young black woman, dressed in a simple uniform, her hands steady as she serves drinks and smiles politely at the guests who don't bother to look her way. To most people in this room, Cassandra is invisible. She's just another waitress, another face in the crowd, and she knows it. She's learned to blend into the background over the years, choosing this job not out of necessity, but as a means to observe, to learn. She has dreams, big dreams, but for now, she serves. As the evening unfolds, Richard, who is enjoying a bit too much attention from his company's investors, begins to get a little playful. With a smug grin, he turns toward the piano, where Cassandra is quietly standing, and issues a challenge, one that echoes through the room. If you can play this piano, I'll marry you, he says, loud enough for the entire table to hear. His words are coated with mockery, an obvious jab at her humble position. The room falls silent for a split second, and a few of the guests chuckle, unsure if Richard is serious or simply enjoying his power over someone he assumes has no talent. The crowd is waiting for her to shrink back, to take the insult and move on, as they all expect her to do. But Cassandra doesn't flinch. In fact, she doesn't even blink. She stands there, her posture tall, her gaze fixed firmly ahead. And then, with a calm that surprises everyone, she walks over to the piano. The crowd watches, some with raised eyebrows, others with smug smiles. What could a waitress possibly know about playing the piano? Cassandra sits down, her fingers hovering over the keys, and without a moment's hesitation, she begins to play. The melody is smooth, intricate, and emotional, flowing through the air like she's been playing for years. The sound of the piano fills the room, rich and powerful, drawing everyone's attention. Richard Connors, whose face was previously filled with amusement, slowly begins to change. His expression shifts from disbelief to a mix of surprise and respect. The room goes quiet as Cassandra continues to play, each note echoing louder than the last. It's as if the entire room has come to a halt, captivated by the raw beauty of her music. No one saw this coming. No one expected a young black woman, a mere waitress, to have this kind of hidden talent. But as the last note rings out, the silence is deafening. Richard Connors, the billionaire who thought he held all the power in the room, is now stunned into silence. His smile has faded, replaced by a look of shock. The tables have turned. Cassandra's fingers rest on the piano keys as she slowly stands up. The crowd is still processing what just happened, and all eyes are on her. The billionaire who mocked her now stands frozen, unsure of how to react. Cassandra doesn't say a word. She doesn't need to. The message is clear. Talent doesn't care about your wealth, your status, or your preconceived notions. It speaks for itself. As the room slowly starts to buzz again, some of the guests exchange knowing glances. They can't help but feel a little embarrassed. The woman they thought was nothing more than a servant has just shown them all what real power looks like. As the last note from Cassandra's piano echoed through the room, the entire atmosphere shifted. Richard Connors, the billionaire CEO, who had once held all the power in the room, stood frozen, staring at the young waitress who had just proven him wrong in the most unexpected way. The silence was thick, and it felt like time itself had slowed down. His smirk had disappeared, replaced by a look of genuine shock. He glanced around, meeting the eyes of the guests, many of whom were now whispering to each other, their expressions changing from smug superiority to uneasy admiration. Cassandra stood tall by the piano, her fingers resting lightly on the keys. She could feel the weight of the room's gaze, but she didn't flinch. She didn't need to. The music had already spoken for her. The once crowded room had gone quiet, but the murmurs began to grow louder. Richard, still processing what had just happened, cleared his throat and forced a weak smile. "Well, I didn't expect that," he said, trying to recover his composure. His voice was shaky, and the confidence he had once exuded was nowhere to be found. Cassandra didn't respond. She simply stood there, her posture graceful, her expression calm and collected. She wasn't waiting for his praise or apology. She had already made her point. The crowd, now a mixture of awe and embarrassment, began to slowly return to their conversations, but the mood had definitely shifted. The room's energy was no longer the same. Cassandra had just shattered their expectations in a way they would never forget. Richard, still struggling to regain control of the situation, tried to redirect the conversation, but his usual charm and wit had lost their effectiveness. His gaze kept drifting back to Cassandra, who was now standing beside the piano, completely unfazed. "Incredible," one of the guests murmured, breaking the silence. "I had no idea," another one whispered. Cassandra heard the comments, but she didn't engage with them. She had no need to explain herself or justify her talent. She had shown them all exactly what she was capable of. As the night wore on, the once boisterous atmosphere of the party felt subdued, almost as if people were reevaluating their own biases and assumptions. Richard's face reddened with frustration, but he couldn't undo what had just transpired. His pride had taken a significant hit, and for the first time that night, he realized that the woman he had so casually mocked was no longer the invisible figure he had assumed her to be. She was now the center of attention, and it was clear to everyone in the room that her worth went far beyond her job title or her appearance. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, but one thing was certain. Cassandra had earned a level of respect in that room that was impossible to ignore. She had exposed the hollowness of the assumptions people held about her, and in doing so, she had forced them to confront their own biases. As the event drew to a close, Richard approached Cassandra, his steps hesitant and unsure. He knew he couldn't simply walk away from the situation without acknowledging what had happened. I owe you an apology," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I had no idea you were that good." Cassandra looked at him, her expression still calm, but there was a glimmer of something in her eyes, something that said she knew exactly what he was trying to do. "It's not about being good," she replied softly. "It's about being seen for who I truly am." Richard stood there for a moment, taken aback by her words. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he simply nodded. He realized then that his wealth and status meant little in the face of true talent and integrity. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Cassandra to stand in the quiet aftermath of the moment she had just created. The guests began to filter out of the room, but the story of the waitress who had stunned a billionaire with her musical genius would linger long after the night had ended. It would be a story told in whispers, shared with friends, and remembered by everyone who had been there. Cassandra had proven that, no matter your background, no matter where you come from, your worth is determined by the strength of your abilities and the confidence to stand tall in the face of adversity. And for Richard Connors, it was a lesson he would never forget. The night had ended, and the glittering event was over, but the lingering tension remained. As the last of the guests trickled out of the room, many still talking in hushed tones about what had just unfolded, Cassandra remained in the same spot by the piano. The guests were gone, but the weight of what had just happened hadn't fully sunk in for her yet. She wasn't waiting for an apology. She had already received her moment. She had shown them exactly who she was. And now, all that was left was to walk away with the quiet dignity that had always defined her. Richard Connors, the billionaire CEO, had come to her after the performance, apologizing with an uncomfortable, almost reluctant sincerity. His words had been strained, and Cassandra had accepted them without much of a reaction. The apology was nice, but it was more about him saving face than about her needing it. She hadn't played for his approval. She hadn't played for anyone's approval. She had played for herself, for the sheer joy of the music that flowed from her hands. As she walked through the now empty room, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't expected. She had always been overlooked, judged by her appearance, by the job she held. Tonight, that had changed. And it wasn't because of anything anyone else had done. It was because she had taken control of the narrative. She had given them a new story to tell, one where she wasn't just a waitress, but a force to be reckoned with. Outside the building, the night air was cool, and the streets were quiet, with only the distant hum of the city to break the silence. Cassandra walked toward her car, her mind racing through the events of the night. She had known this would happen eventually. She had known there was something more to her than the world had been willing to see. But even as she had proved herself tonight, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to come. This wasn't the end of her story, it was just the beginning. The next morning, Cassandra woke up to a flood of notifications. Her performance at the event had gone viral. The video of her playing the piano had been shared across social media platforms, and her name was trending. She was being praised by strangers, by people who had never known her before, people who were now seeing her for the first time. The comments were overwhelmingly positive, some even calling her a hidden genius. But Cassandra didn't feel like a genius. She didn't need the praise. What she needed was the recognition that she had always deserved. She had spent years being invisible, and now, finally, people were paying attention. But it wasn't the attention that mattered. It was the change in perception. She wasn't just a woman of service anymore. She was someone with talent, with purpose. As the day went on, she received a call from Richard Connors. He wanted to meet with her. His voice was different this time, less smug, more genuine. He had seen the reaction to her performance, and he knew that the public perception had changed. "I'd like to offer you an opportunity," Richard said, after a brief pause. "I want you to come work with us at the company. I believe you have a lot to offer, and I think it's time we stop judging people based on where they come from." The offer was unexpected, and Cassandra wasn't sure what to think. She had never imagined herself working for someone like Richard Connors. But there was something different about him now. The arrogance that had defined him was gone, replaced by a sense of humility. He had learned something that night, something she had known for a long time. People are more than what they appear to be. Cassandra listened quietly, weighing her options. She had always dreamed of a different life, one where her talents were appreciated. But she wasn't ready to just jump into something because it was offered to her. She had worked hard for every step she had taken, and she would only move forward when she was sure it was the right choice. "I appreciate the offer," she said finally, "but I need time to think about it. I've worked hard to get where I am, and I want to make sure that any decision I make is for the right reasons." Richard, for the first time, didn't push her. He simply acknowledged her response with a nod. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As she hung up the phone, Cassandra felt a sense of accomplishment. She had finally been seen for who she truly was. And now, the next chapter of her life was hers to write. She wasn't just the woman who played the piano at a party. She was someone with a future, someone who could take on whatever came next. She had proven herself, not for the validation of others, but for herself. And that was enough. The days following the party were a whirlwind for Cassandra. Her phone seemed to never stop ringing. Her inbox flooded with messages and offers from all corners of the business and entertainment world. But she remained grounded, taking each call with the same calm demeanor that had helped her maintain control throughout her life. Her world had shifted dramatically, but Cassandra wasn't the type to let herself be swept away by the tide of sudden fame. She had worked hard for her place in the world, and she wasn't going to lose herself now. As the media continued to share the video of her piano performance, Cassandra found herself reflecting on the path that had brought her here. Growing up, she had always been told that her dreams were out of reach. Society had made her feel small, overlooked, and insignificant. But music had been her escape, her way of fighting back against the world that seemed determined to ignore her. Every note she played, every song she learned, was an act of defiance. It wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about proving to herself that she could. She didn't need validation from the people who underestimated her. The validation she needed came from within. And now, after all those years of silence, the world was finally listening. Richard Connors had called her several more times in the days following their meeting. His offer still stood. The tech company was ready to welcome her into their fold, to give her a platform to showcase her talents and ideas. But Cassandra was hesitant. She had spent so much of her life working in the background, watching others take the spotlight. Now that it was finally her turn, she wasn't sure where to go next. Was she ready to dive into the world of corporate power and influence? Or was there another path she was meant to take? One afternoon, she sat by her window, watching the city bustle beneath her, when she got a call from her old friend Maya. Maya had been there for Cassandra through thick and thin, a constant source of support and encouragement. "So, are you going to take the job?" Maya asked, her voice full of curiosity. Cassandra hesitated. "I'm not sure," she said, her eyes distant as she looked out at the skyline. "I've always wanted more. But I don't know if that's the path I want now. I've spent so long in the shadows. I'm not sure if I want to step into the light in this way." Maya chuckled softly. "I get it. But sometimes the light is exactly where you belong." Cassandra smiled at that. She knew Maya was right. It wasn't just about the job. It was about taking ownership of her future, of her worth. "You've been underestimated your whole life," Maya continued. "And now, the world is finally giving you the chance to show them who you really are. Don't turn that down." Cassandra's heart swelled as she listened to her friend's words. She had always been the quiet observer, the one who stayed out of the way. But maybe it was time for her to stand up, to take her place in the world. That evening, she finally made her decision. She would accept Richard's offer. But she wouldn't just work for him. She would take control of her own narrative. She would use the platform she had been given to create something bigger than herself, something that spoke to the world. Cassandra wasn't just going to be a player in someone else's game. She was going to rewrite the rules. The next day, she called Richard and accepted the job. "But there's one condition," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not just here to work for you. I'm here to make a difference. I want to be part of something that changes the way people think, the way they see talent, the way they see potential. I won't settle for anything less." Richard was silent for a moment, then laughed. "You've got guts, Cassandra. I like that." And with that, Cassandra stepped into a new chapter of her life, one that she had written for herself. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. She had spent too long in the shadows. Now it was time for her to step into the light, and this time, she was going to shine brighter than ever before. As Cassandra settled into her new role at the company, she was determined to make her mark. Richard Connors had kept his word, giving her a platform to build something meaningful. Yet, as the days passed, she quickly realized that the world of corporate power was far more complicated than she had imagined. The flashy offices, the constant meetings, the endless stream of emails, none of it felt like the life she had envisioned. She had always known she wanted to create, to innovate, but now that she was in the thick of it, she was beginning to wonder if she had made the right choice. Still, she pressed on. Every day, she reminded herself why she had chosen this path, to prove that talent could not be confined to a particular place, to show that greatness could come from anyone, anywhere. She wasn't just there to build a career, she was there to change the game. In the first few months, Cassandra's contributions to the company were small but impactful. She used her experiences as a waitress to design new strategies for employee engagement, focusing on human connection and empathy. She pushed for programs that would help the overlooked and underappreciated employees, those working in the background who, like her, had never been given a real shot. At first, her ideas were met with some resistance. The higher-ups weren't used to someone coming in with a different approach. They expected her to follow the typical corporate playbook, be quiet, fit in, and rise through the ranks by proving she could do things the right way. But Cassandra wasn't here to fit in. She was here to change the conversation. Slowly but surely, her ideas began to take hold. She wasn't just trying to fit into a corporate world that had always dismissed her. She was making that world fit her. The turning point came one afternoon when Cassandra was invited to present her vision for the future of the company. It was a high-stakes moment, an opportunity to prove that she wasn't just a talented pianist, but a force to be reckoned with in business as well. As she stood in front of the boardroom, looking out at the sea of executives and investors, she could feel the weight of the moment. This was her time. "I know the road to success isn't easy," she began, her voice steady. "But it's the road less traveled that holds the greatest rewards. We have the chance to be something different, to be the company that values the people behind the work. I want to build a place where everyone, no matter their role, is seen, heard, and valued." The room was silent, and for a brief moment, Cassandra felt the familiar sensation of being underestimated. They were listening, but not yet convinced. She pushed forward. We are at a turning point. The world is changing, and so must we. If we want to lead, we need to show that leadership comes from everywhere. It's time for us to be a company that stands for more than just profits. We need to stand for people. As she finished, there was a pause, longer than she would have liked. But then Richard Connors, sitting at the head of the table, nodded. He had always been the toughest critic, but now, as he looked at her, something had changed. He wasn't just impressed, he was moved. I think we've been missing something, he said. Cassandra's right. It's time to make a change. Let's get to work. That moment marked the beginning of a new chapter for Cassandra. She wasn't just the woman who had played the piano at a billionaire's party anymore. She was now shaping the future of the company, using her unique perspective to create something more inclusive, more compassionate, and more impactful. The work ahead wasn't easy, but she was ready for it. There were days when she felt overwhelmed, when the weight of responsibility seemed too much to bear. But she reminded herself of why she was there. She wasn't just proving a point anymore. She was leading a movement. As the weeks passed, the changes she had proposed began to take root. The company implemented new policies to ensure that every employee, no matter their position, felt valued. They introduced mentorship programs, launched initiatives to support diversity and inclusion, and redefined what it meant to be a leader in their industry. Cassandra was no longer an outsider looking in. She had become a driving force within the company, a leader in her own right. The journey was just beginning, but one thing was certain. Cassandra had shown the world that anyone, no matter where they started, could rise to greatness. And she was just getting started. Months passed since Cassandra had taken the reins at the company, and the changes she had implemented were beginning to show results. The company was growing, but it wasn't just financial success that Cassandra measured her success by. It was the culture she had helped create. The workplace had shifted. People were no longer just employees. They were individuals who felt valued, heard, and seen. And this wasn't just a superficial change. Employees were genuinely more engaged, more productive, and, most importantly, more loyal. But even as things were looking up, Cassandra knew that this was only the beginning. There was still much work to be done. One afternoon, while reviewing some new employee feedback, Cassandra received a call from Richard. His voice was unusually serious, and as she listened, she realized that something big was coming. Cassandra, we've been presented with an opportunity, Richard said. A major competitor is facing some financial issues, and they've approached us for a potential buyout. This could change everything for us, but I need to know if you're on board. Cassandra paused. A buyout was a huge move, and it wasn't a decision to be taken lightly. I need time to think about this, she said, her voice steady. Let's discuss it more in person. The following day, they met in the company's conference room, where the atmosphere was tense. Richard laid out the details. The competitor, a company that had once been a leader in the industry, was now struggling. The opportunity to acquire them could give their company a significant boost. But there was a catch. The competitor's culture was vastly different, and Cassandra wasn't sure how their values would align with the new leadership. The thought of taking on a company that might not share their vision was daunting. I know it's risky, Richard admitted, but it's a chance to grow, and we'd have the power to shape the company in our image. Cassandra took a deep breath, considering the options. On one hand, the buyout could propel their company into a new era of success. But on the other hand, she didn't want to risk losing the culture she had worked so hard to build. After a long pause, she finally spoke. I believe in this company, she said, her voice unwavering. But I'm not willing to compromise the values we've worked so hard to create. If we move forward with this, we have to be sure that the people we bring in will align with our culture. We can't afford to lose what makes us different. Richard nodded, clearly impressed by her conviction. I agree. Let's make sure we're careful about how we integrate them. In the weeks that followed, Cassandra worked tirelessly with the leadership team to ensure that the integration would go smoothly. She personally met with the leadership of the competitor's company, making it clear that their success would depend on how well they embraced the values of empathy, inclusion, and respect that had become the cornerstone of their company. It was a delicate process. There were moments when it felt like the two cultures might clash, but Cassandra remained determined. She focused on building relationships, creating opportunities for collaboration, and showing that the company was a place where everyone, regardless of their background or role, could succeed. Slowly but surely, the transition began to work. The two companies started to blend, their strengths complementing each other in ways that no one had anticipated. The employees from the competitor's company began to feel the difference. They were no longer just employees in a faceless corporation. They were now part of something larger, something that valued their contributions and recognized their potential. As the months went by, Cassandra watched the company thrive. The integration had been successful, and the growth they had hoped for was becoming a reality. But more than that, she saw how the culture she had fought for was now embedded in every corner of the organization. People weren't just working for a paycheck anymore. They were working for something they believed in. The success of the buyout was a defining moment for Cassandra. It wasn't just about the financial gains or the power they had gained in the industry. It was about the values they had upheld, the culture they had created, and the impact they had made on the lives of their employees. And with that success, Cassandra knew that she had done more than just change a company. She had changed the way people viewed what was possible, not just in business, but in life. She had proven that anyone, no matter their background, could rise to greatness. And in doing so, she had created a legacy that would last long after she had moved on to her next challenge. The days turned into weeks, and Cassandra's influence within the company continued to grow. The integration was complete, and the merger was hailed as a success, not just financially, but culturally. The company was thriving, with a renewed sense of purpose that resonated through every department. Cassandra had done more than lead a corporate transition. She had cultivated a transformation that was palpable in the day-to-day workings of the office. But as with every success, new challenges began to emerge. While the company had become a beacon for empathy, inclusion, and innovation, there were still external pressures mounting on them. The industry they operated in was cutthroat, and while their values had made them stand out, they also made them vulnerable to competitors who saw their success as a threat. Cassandra knew that the next phase of their growth would require more than just internal harmony. It would take vision, resilience, and a deep commitment to their core beliefs. One afternoon, while reviewing quarterly reports, Cassandra received an unexpected call from Richard. His voice was tense, and she could tell this wasn't going to be a routine conversation. "Cassandra," he said, "we've been approached by a powerful competitor. They want to buy us out." Cassandra's heart sank. This wasn't the first time they had faced such offers, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about money. It was about the company's future. The competitor wasn't just interested in acquiring their assets. They wanted to dismantle what Cassandra had worked so hard to build. "What's their plan?" Cassandra asked, her voice steady, but her mind racing. "They want to merge the companies and take control," Richard explained. "But they don't share our values. They want to cut costs, streamline operations, and make everything more efficient. That could mean eliminating the programs we've built for our employees." Cassandra could feel the weight of the decision. This was a crossroads for the company, a moment that would define its future. "I can't let that happen," she said, her voice firm. "We've built something here that goes beyond profits. If they don't understand that, then we can't work with them." Richard agreed. "I'm with you, but we need to be prepared. We can't afford to just walk away from this without a fight." In the weeks that followed, Cassandra worked tirelessly to rally the team. She called together the leadership, shared her concerns, and outlined a plan to defend the company's values. They would not let their principles be compromised, and they would make it clear to the competitor that the heart of their company was not for sale. The battle was intense. The competitor's team was aggressive, and they tried every angle to convince Cassandra and Richard that a merger was the best move for everyone involved. But Cassandra stood firm. She fought for the company's mission, for the people who believed in what they had created, and for the culture that had been forged through so much hard work. In the end, the competitor's offer was rejected. They had underestimated the strength of the company's vision and the loyalty of its people. Cassandra had won, but it wasn't just a victory for her. It was a victory for the values that had made their success possible. The company emerged stronger than ever. They continued to grow, but this time, they did it on their own terms. Cassandra knew the fight wasn't over. There would always be challenges, always be threats from outside forces trying to disrupt the peace they had worked so hard to build. But now, she was more confident than ever in the company's resilience. The road ahead was long, but Cassandra knew they were ready. As she sat in her office, looking out over the city skyline, she couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. She had started as a waitress, overlooked, and underestimated, and now she was leading one of the most innovative and inclusive companies in the industry. She had proven that anyone, no matter where they started, could rise to greatness. And for Cassandra, that was only the beginning. She had built something that would last, a legacy that would inspire generations to come. As Cassandra sat in her office late one evening, the city lights glittering below, she found herself reflecting on the path she had taken. The past few years had been a whirlwind of challenges, victories, and growth. The company had flourished under her leadership, and she had proven that the principles of empathy, inclusion, and innovation could not only thrive, but also lead to unparalleled success. But despite everything they had accomplished, there was still a feeling inside her that she couldn't quite shake, a feeling that she had only just begun. She had fought hard to build a culture where people were valued for who they were, not just what they could contribute to the bottom line. She had shown the world that talent and greatness could come from the most unexpected places, and now she was ready to take the next step. Cassandra had always been driven by something deeper than success or money. She wanted to leave a legacy that would inspire others to believe in their own worth, regardless of where they started. She wanted to show people that no dream was too big and no obstacle too great if they were willing to push through. She had lived through enough adversity to know that the most powerful stories were those of perseverance. Just as she was deep in thought, her phone rang. It was Richard. "Cassandra, I have a proposal for you," he said. "We've been invited to a global summit for business leaders. It's a huge opportunity to showcase everything we've built, our culture, our values, and our vision for the future." Cassandra listened carefully, but she could sense there was more to this than just another conference. "What's the catch?" she asked, her voice steady. "It's not a catch, but it's not going to be easy. The summit is highly selective. They only invite a handful of companies, and the competition is fierce. You'll be representing our company, and we'll need to show the world that what we've built is sustainable, scalable, and a model for the future." Cassandra paused, thinking about the weight of the responsibility. She had always been a quiet force, a leader who let her work speak for itself. But this was different. This was a chance to take everything they had accomplished to a global stage, to inspire others in a way they hadn't before. "I'm in," she said, her voice full of determination. "Let's do it." Over the next few weeks, Cassandra and Richard worked tirelessly to prepare for the summit. They were going to showcase their company's story, a story of resilience, vision, and transformation. It wasn't just about the products or profits. It was about the people who made it all possible. They wanted to prove that success wasn't just about numbers. It was about creating an environment where individuals could thrive. The day of the summit arrived, and Cassandra walked onto the stage, her heart pounding. She wasn't just representing her company now. She was representing every underdog who had ever been told they didn't belong. She had made it. She had proved them wrong. As she began her speech, her words flowed effortlessly. She spoke about the importance of empathy in leadership, about how every person, no matter their background, had the potential to make an impact. She shared the challenges they had faced, the hurdles they had overcome, and the lessons they had learned along the way. The audience was captivated. For the first time, they weren't just hearing about profits and margins. They were hearing about real people, about values, and about a vision for the future that could change the business world forever. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. It wasn't just because of her delivery. It was because of the message she had conveyed. She had changed the conversation. In the months that followed, the company's reputation grew. They became a beacon of innovation, attracting the best talent from around the world. Cassandra's vision had proven that empathy and business could coexist, and that people, not just products, were the true drivers of success. But more than that, she had created a movement that showed others that no matter where they came from, they could rise to greatness. It was a story that had started with a woman who was underestimated, who had played a piano at a party and stunned the world. And now, that story was inspiring others to believe in themselves. Cassandra had built a legacy, and she knew it was only the beginning. As the years passed, Cassandra continued to lead her company with the same passion, vision, and drive that had gotten her this far. The business world had taken notice of the company's success, and soon, other organizations were looking to her for advice and guidance. She had become a respected voice in the industry, not just for her accomplishments, but for the values she stood for. The company had become a model of success, proving that profitability and empathy could coexist. And as much as it seemed like the perfect ending to her story, Cassandra knew that the journey was far from over. One evening, as she sat in her office reflecting on how far she had come, she received a call from a former colleague. It was Maya, the friend who had always been there for her. "Cass, I saw your interview on the news," Maya said. "You've built something incredible. You've created a legacy, and I'm so proud of you." Cassandra smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Maya, but I couldn't have done any of it without the people around me. I've had incredible support from everyone here, and I've learned so much along the way." Maya's voice softened. "I've been thinking a lot about you lately, about how you've changed the world, but also how you've changed yourself. You're not just the woman who was underestimated. You're someone who's helping others rise, who's showing them that they don't have to settle for less. You've become a role model." Cassandra felt a lump in her throat. She had never set out to be a role model. She had only wanted to make a difference in her own life and in the lives of those around her. But hearing Maya's words made her realize that the impact she had made was far greater than she had ever imagined. "I'm just getting started," Cassandra said, her voice filled with determination. "There's still so much more to do. I want to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed, no matter where they start. I want to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible, showing people that they don't have to be limited by their circumstances." As the conversation came to a close, Cassandra felt a sense of fulfillment. She had built something incredible, something that would continue to inspire future generations. But she knew that her story wasn't just about her. It was about the countless others who had come together to make it happen. The people who believed in the power of empathy, kindness, and inclusion. The people who were willing to take risks, to defy the odds, and to prove that success was not just about profit but about purpose. Cassandra's legacy wasn't just about a company or an achievement. It was about a movement that encouraged people to believe in themselves, to stand up for what was right, and to always push forward. And as she looked toward the future, Cassandra knew that the world was full of untold stories of people who were waiting for their moment to rise. She had been given her chance, and now she was determined to help others do the same. The journey was never easy, but Cassandra had shown that with resilience, faith in oneself, and the right support, anything was possible. She had turned her dream into a reality, and in doing so, she had rewritten the narrative for so many others. And as she took one last look at the city skyline from her office window, she knew this was only the beginning. The story of overcoming adversity, of proving the world wrong, and of showing the power of believing in yourself, was one that would continue for generations to come. Cassandra had not just built a company. She had built a legacy, and her story was far from finished. In this inspiring Black story, a young woman begins as a waitress in a world that overlooks her potential, only to defy the odds and rise to a position of leadership. Cassandra's journey is one of transformation, proving that anyone, no matter their background, can overcome adversity and achieve greatness. Her story is a testament to the power of resilience and self-belief, showcasing how a Black story can inspire others to never settle for less. Throughout her rise, Cassandra challenges the norms of a corporate world that often dismisses individuals like her. But her determination leads to change, not only for herself, but for the entire company. Her success becomes more than just a personal achievement. It turns into a movement that demonstrates the importance of empathy, inclusivity, and purpose-driven leadership. The lessons learned from her Black story inspire countless others to believe that their voices matter and that they can carve out their own success. As she continues to pave the way for others, Cassandra's journey exemplifies the power of standing up against the odds and rewriting the narrative. This Black story encourages us all to embrace our potential, no matter where we come from, and to never stop pushing forward in the pursuit of our dreams.